Let's get started. Hello everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel that is UPSC Geek by NRG. Today we will be starting with lecture number 5 where we are mainly continuing our first chapter that is ethics and human interface. In lecture number 4 we have dealt with the concept of relationship between ethics and values, right? Where we have mainly understood what does the term values mean, and we have learned that values are individual principles or qualities that guide the judgment and behavior of a person on a group, and we have compared it to the analogy of anchor in a ship, right? Then we have seen how values flow from the highest of our own self, right? It is being the product of conscience and reason, right? Then we have seen the various sources of values where we have learned there is an internal source and external source, right? And external source being the environment, and through the process of continuously learning through the environment the values are shaped in individual. Then we have seen two types of values on the basis of importance, that was intrinsic value and extrinsic value, right? Then we have seen on the basis of outcome there are two types of values, that is positive value and negative values. Positive values being justice, gender equality, which is basically have a positive consequences or outcome in the society. So those kinds of values are basically the positive values. Then we have understood when values will be ethical, right? And we have seen the two conditions. If any particular values meet that particular two conditions, then that will be considered ethical. Then we have seen a concept of crisis of value, which is very important, and even questions are being asked from this particular concept of crisis of value, right? Then we have moved to the concept of apadharma, that how even the violation of duty can be just in certain crisis or in the situation of disaster, right? So such concept is called as apadharma. Then we have seen an PYQ analysis, right, where we have tried holistically attempted this answer so that we can have an edge when we will be attempting a answer in either in the mock test or in the real examination of GS number 4, right? And we have seen another question, that was what do you understand by values and ethics, and in what way it is important to be ethical along with professionally competence, where we have seen this answer in the form of an analogy or a graph, where we have understood how a individual with high ethics and high values or high professional competency is considered to be the best. And we have seen the examples of great personalities like Sir Ratan Tata, Narayan Satyamurthy, and Narayan Krishnamurthy, Ajim Premji, and etc., right? So these are the stalwarts of our India development, right? And we have seen how their professional competency with high ethical values led them to the great heights of success, right, in their respective fields. So we have seen. So now let's start today's lecture with a kind of recollection. To what extent are you guys really into the process of learning GS paper 4, right? So the first question here is that which of the following is opposite of normative ethics, right? But before delving ourselves into the question, let me tell the rules that for each question you will be having 10 seconds of time, right? So once I recite the questions, the time will start. You guys have to think in this time boundation of 10 seconds, then answer will be discussed here. Okay, so the first question is which of the following is opposite of normative ethics, and the time starts now. Okay, so now let's see the answer. You people might have guessed it right if you guys have truly attended the previous lectures, and if you guys haven't, then go and watch the previous lectures, because if you guys haven't watched the previous lecture, it will not help you to build that conceptual understanding in the further lecture. Okay, so which one of the following is the opposite of normative ethics? So the answer is basically meta ethics. So just to give you a brief idea behind it, normative ethics is basically a branch of ethics which basically prescribes the norms of ethical standard, right? Like what should be norms, what should be the norms of particular actions on the basis of which the action can be judged on the ground of good or bad, right? Good or bad. This, that is why this is also called as prescriptive ethics, right? Why? Because it prescribes what should be the norms or standard upon which any action should be judged on the standard of good or bad. And what is the answer? Metaethics. What is metaethics? Metaethics do not prescribe, it basically defines certain terminology and terms in ethics. If we are saying this particular act is good, then what does this term good means? On what basis we are deriving this standard of goodness of any action, right? So that particular branch of ethics is known as metaethics, right? So this is what is the answer for these questions. Now let's see other question. Which of the following moral theory of ethics and their provisions is slash are not correctly matched? Okay, so there will be various ethical theories, and you guys have to tell me which one is the correctly matched. Okay, so the first one is utilitarian ethics, which basically says that the greatest good for the greatest number, right? The second branch is deontological ethics, which says that human beings should be treated with dignity and respect because they have rights. And the third one is virtue ethics, which says that considering what virtue makes a good public relations. And your time starts now. Alright, we are done with 10 seconds. Now let's see the answer. So the answer is basically none of the above, because every branch of ethics is correctly matched with their particular notion, right? Because utilitarian ethics or consequential ethics, which says that the greatest happiness for the greatest number, greatest good for the greatest number. And who are the advocate or propounder of this school? Basically Bentham, Mill and etc. are the advocate or propounder of this particular branch of ethics. Okay, the second one is deontological ethics. What is deontological ethics? It is basically a Kantian idea. This is basically a Kantian idea which says that men ought to be treated as an end in themselves, as an end and not as a means, right? Why? Because they have their own dignity and respect, right? And that is why they should not be treated as a means to an end, right? So this is Kantian idea, and this is the profound notion behind deontological ethics. And third is the virtue ethics, which says that if the idea or if the means are virtuous, then the end will always be virtuous, right? So considering what virtue makes a good public relation, so each and every branch is correctly matched with their notion, and hence none of the above are incorrectly matched. Okay, so answer is none of the above. I am hoping that you guys are following on the lectures and getting the concept right. If you guys aren't, then just make sure to watch the lecture for the building of solid pedestal upon which you can build your future premises, right? And you guys can also mention your answers by mentioning each question's number and their respective answers in the comment. I will for sure check it and give it a like. Okay, so let's get started with today's lecture, that is relationship between ethics and law. Okay, most of the time what we tend to do is we tend to consider or misrelate ourselves when it comes to ethics and law, but sometimes ethics and law can be two different sides, right, or two parts of the extreme, right? So let's see what are the common notions or the common outcome of ethics and law are, right? So the first is both deals with the human conduct, right? Both deals with the human conduct, because when set of rules they are enforced, if they are enforced by the state or authority, it becomes what? It becomes law. And what are the set of rules or moral standards which guide the action of individual? It is basically, or individual or the actions in the society, it is basically ethics, right? So we can say that ethics, when enforced by the state or any authority, it becomes what? It becomes law, right? So there is a relationship between ethics and law. So what is the common goal of both? Both deals with the human conduct, right? So they both deals with the human conduct. They are not something metaphysical, right? They do not talk about any beyond or extra territorial entities, right? They both deals with the conduct of humans, right? Either you conduct a theft or you lie, they both are considered as the was inappropriate in terms of both ethics and law, right? And these two or these both are the human conduct. Hence both ethics and law deals with the human conduct. This is the first common idea. Both guides and influence our behavior, right? Even ethics guides and influences our behavior. We all know that lying is not ethical, right? And hence we do not lie. And similarly law is also guides and influence our behavior, because in certain situation if we lie we can get punishment by the authority, right, or by the police. And hence both guides and influence our behavior in positive way, right? So law and ethics are considered to be the two tools, okay, two tools for controlling human conduct so as to make it conducive to civilized social existence, right? You can take this statement in your notes so that whenever any questions related to ethics and law is asked, you can always give this particular statement either as a conclusion or in introduction itself, right? Which says that law and ethics are considered to be the two tools for controlling human conduct so as to make it conducive to civilized social existence, right? This is what a basic premise of ethics and law is, right? All right, I'm hoping that you guys are getting it, right? So you guys can take note of this particular statement, which is very important and can be a game or tiebreaker in case of evaluation of your answer, right? So now let us understand in particular what is law. What does this term law means? Okay, so law is a system of rules and guidelines, okay? It is a system of rules and guidelines which are enforced by government or concerned authority, right? So as I have just said that what is law? Law is basically a set of rules, right, which are enforced by the authority, right? Why it is enforced by the authority? Because just understand the concept of law is that we will see them in the latter part of the lecture of thinkers, okay, philosophical thinkers. He says that covenant without sword is nothing but a word, right? Right? So what does this mean? You guys can take note of this particular statement. It is very, very important in order to make that justification of enforcement of law. This particular statement needs to be mentioned, right? So what does this particular statement means? That covenant without sword is nothing but a word. It basically means that if there is a covenant, what does the term covenant mean? Means it is basically a agreement, right? It is basically a agreement. हेलो बाबू, मधु को घंटी बजाने के लिए मना करो तो वो मना कर दो, बिना घंटी के दिखाए वो लोग। All right, now let us see the concept in their individual sense, right? We have seen the relationship between law and ethics. Now understand what does this particular term law means, right? We already have understood the common notion of what law is in our polity section, but let's understand law from the ethical point of view, right? What is law? Law is a system of rules and guidelines which are enforced by the government or concerned authority, right? So as I have already told you that law is a nothing but a set of rules which are enforced by authority, right? And here you have to take into the notion of Locke's idea, like John Locke's idea. We will understand Locke's idea in greater depth in when we will do the philosophical thinkers, right? He says that covenant without sword is nothing but a word, right? He says that a covenant, what does this term covenant mean? It basically means a law, agreement, right? A law. So a law without a sword, without a punishment, is nothing but a word, right? If there is a law which is not bounded by the fear of punishment or threat, people will not follow it, right? That is why when a set of universal rules, it is enforced by a authority, then it becomes what? It becomes law. What are this set of rules? This set of rules are basically the ethical or universal ethical norms which are very important for society in order to maintain peace and harmony, right? So there are very illicit ethical norms as well which are not taken under the purview of law or legality, right? But there are certain set of rules or ethical rules which are considered sacrosanct or very important in order to maintain harmony in the society. And just in order to ensure that everyone follows this particular set of rules which are very important to maintain harmony in the society, it is enforced by the authority, and it becomes what? It becomes law. So this is the definition of law, that law is a system of rules and guidelines which are enforced by authority or government. Okay, so law tries to protect public as well as private life of citizens, right? So this is the basic function of law. What does law do? It basically tries to protect public as well as private life of citizens, right? When there is any disharmony or chaotic situation arises, there is a provision of section 144, that is curfew, right? And when there is any provisions or any threat to the personal life or the private life, there is also certain provision under CRPC which has been changed now and became some Nyaya Samhita, right? And there is a provision to protect the private life of citizens as well, right? So law tries to protect both the public as well as private life of citizens, right? So this is the function of law. What is the objective of law? What is the final goal of law? To maintain social order, peace with the nation, right? To maintain what? Social order and peace within the nation, right? So if we will look into the social contractualist school of philosopher, they basically propounds the ideas. Who are the social contractualists? Basically Hobbes, Locke and Rousseau. We will see them in their individual sense in greater and most profound clarity in the later thinkers part, right? But now just to give you a basic understanding, they basically take a common notion of nature of human beings, that is nature of humans are basically what? Passion driven in nature, right? They are driven by their passion and not reason, and hence they chase resources to satisfy their inner passion, and since we all know that these resources are limited in nature, and the needs are unlimited, right, it leads to the creation of what? It leads to a creation of war-like situation, right? Because there is a one product which is being chased by multiple people, and people have to fight among themselves in order to get this one thing, in order to satiate their inner passion, right? And just to avoid this particular situation of war, right, which is very much inherent or part of human nature, this covenant or the law is brought under the contours of enforcement, right, under the contour of what? Enforcement or punishment, so that the social order, peace within the nation is maintained throughout, right? So this is the basic idea behind what is law, what is the goal of or function of law, and what is the final goal of law. I am hoping that you guys have understood the basic definition behind law. You just have to take into the consideration the definition of law and the objective and function, which I have tried giving here in very simplistic terms, right? If you will just recite it 10 times, you will remember it. Because see, while attempting any answer, the basic definitions becomes very important. You just don't have to attend one questions, you have to attempt 20 questions in exams, right? And if you have this preset definition and the basic ideas, you will be able to produce these ideas very effectively in exam, and you can save lot of your time, so that you can attempt all the 20 questions, right? And this will decide your rank, this will decide your fate into the holy list of UPSC, right? So this is why I am giving you very precise definition, precise ideas behind each and every concept, so that you can see yourself in this holy list of UPSC, right? So guys, I am hoping that you guys are enjoying the lecture. If you guys are, then please show your love as well by subscribing to the channel. All right, so now let's see some of the ultimate objective of ethics and law together, right? We have just seen what is the objective of law is. We also know what is the objective of ethics is, right? The objective of ethics is also on the same line, right? But the only difference between ethics and law is that ethics is not enforced, right? Not enforced, whereas law is enforced by the authority, right? So this is the basic difference between both of them, ethics and law. Now see some of the ultimate objective of ethics and law, right? So the ultimate objective is social upliftment, right? Social upliftment, what does this mean? The social upliftment is basically the liftment or upliftment of human beings from the state of nature, from the natural conditions, right? In state of nature, it is like a chaotic situation, and hence the ethics and law both tries to uplift the human beings or homo sapiens from their state of nature, so that they can live a progressive and harmonious life. What is the second ultimate objective? The second objective is the social welfare, right? The welfare or promotion of interest and conditions of people in society, so that they can live in harmony with each other, right? So this is the basic idea behind the social welfare, peace and harmony. We all know that, right? If there is no law, everyone will be behaving by their or through their natural instinct, which will become very chaotic in nature, right? And hence it tries to maintain peace and harmony in the society, and the ultimate goal is justice, right? What is justice? It is basically what? Again, the definition can be varied from thinkers to thinker, but in simple sense, or according to, or from the perspective of ethics, justice is basically giving their due or respective due to everyone, right? Giving their respective due to everyone. This is what justice is, and these are the some of the ultimate objectives which both ethics and law tries to establish, right? Now let's see some of the difference between ethics and law, right? So there are several questions which are being asked in relation to ethics with law, right? They will be asking the situation, different situational questions, right? Explain through an example if something is legally right but not ethically, or ethically right but not legally, right? So they will always ask question in relation to ethics and law, right? So you must know the similarities and differences between both ethics and law, so that you will be able to draw your answer much effectively, right? So now let's make a line here. Okay, and try looking at the difference between ethics and law, right? So what is the difference? So the first difference here is that ethics rest upon voluntary submission, right? Voluntary submission. Try taking a note side by side. You will not get this content anywhere, so try taking this simpler crisp note side by side, and it will help you revise multiple times during the exam, right? These are very, very profound crisp notes. And what is the law? Law is basically mandatory in nature. It is a mandatory submission, right? Why it is mandatory? Because it is enforced by law. If people will not follow it, if people will violate the law, they will be punished, right? And hence it is enforced by law. So ethics is voluntary submission. It is our own subjective values, our own subjective morals which lead us to follow the path of ethics. But law is something mandatory. Mandatory by whom? Mandatory by authority or the state, right? What is the second difference? The second difference is basically ethics speak about what is good and just. Ethics speak about what is good and just, right? It is basically speaks or propounds the idea of what is good and just, and on the basis of this particular standard of good and just, we are following the rules of ethics, right? We know that telling lie is not good, and hence we try to avoid telling lie. We know theft is not ethical, and hence we try avoiding theft. We also know that helping our friends and the people who are in the need is good and just act, and on the basis of this standard that is good and just, we tend to follow ethics. But in case of law, we follow law because it is based on the promise of reward and punishment. It is based on the promise of reward and punishment, right? It is something which is being promised or enforced through the promise of reward and punish. That is, if we do not follow the law, we will be punished according to the law, and if we will follow the law, we will be also given a reward, right? Like several citizens who come from certain specialized sect, they are given reward by the government of India, right? So the third difference is in ethics, personal beliefs and values plays important role, right? In ethics, personal beliefs and values play important role. If my values are more good and just, then my ethical standard and my set of rules, that is ethics, will also be what? Good, right? And in case of law are externally basically imposed. They are externally imposed. They are not driven by any internal stimulus or values or beliefs. It is basically internally enforced. What does this mean? It has nothing to do with our values and beliefs. It has to do, but it is more of an external foundation, right? Because since it is externally imposed by the or the enforced by the state or authority, we are bound to follow the law, and if not, then we will be punished, right? What is the four difference? It involves responsibility, right? It involves responsibility. Why? Because we all are a social animal. We all are social animal, and we all ought to safeguard the interest of others as well, and hence for that we ensure to be ethical in society when we are part of the society. But in case of law, it involves accountability, right? Since we are citizens, we are accountable to the state to follow the law, and hence it involves accountability. Which is the fifth difference? So basically ethics is an internal sanction. It is internal sanction, right? It is an internal sanction, whereas law is an external sanction, right? It is an external sanction. What does this term internal sanction means? Let's say if we are violating our set of ethics, then our internal conscience will not support us, right? And hence it is being sanctioned internally, either to follow ethics or not. But in case of law, it is always an external sanction, where an external authority guides our or influences our behavior. This was about the difference, right? Now let's see some of the more difference. So the one most important difference from the point of view of ethics is, when we violate ethics, it led us to the feeling of remorse, or repentance. Okay, repent. But when we violate what law, it's always the consequences is punishment, right? And this is why this is something internal sanction and this is external sanction, right? Ethics always deals with what ought to be, what ought to be, and law always deals with must be, right? If there is something in law, it must be obliged or followed, right? If not, then here the punishment will follow up, right? So these are some of the major differences. And if we talk about the source, then again the source of ethics is something which are the product of conscience or one's reason, right? One's reason. But when it comes to law, it is basically a product of a legislation or legislator upon which people have entrusted their faith and belief, right? So these are some of the important difference between ethics and law. You guys should pause the video and take a note of it, because it is very important and can be used in multiple type of answers, right? With this, now let's jump into the next concept, that is, are you still here? Are you still listening to the lecture carefully, or you are just here physically and mentally absent, right? I will get to know that if you answer these questions in the comment section. So the question here is that the rules of ethics when enforced are also called as, right? So when the rules of ethics that is enforced is called as what? The option A is rules, option B is law, option C is responsibility, and most peaceful answer is none of the above, right? Which will let you have no guilt even if you answer wrong, right? So ensure to answer this particular questions in comment box. I will check it and I will respond to you, because I am also accountable to you all, right? So, and you guys are also accountable to me. You should be accountable to me if you guys are entrusting your faith upon me, so as to score greater marks in GS number 4, that is ethics paper, right? And so try answering this question, okay, in the comment section. And now let's see a very beautiful concept. Can law be a source of ethics or morality? Can law be a source of ethics or morality? Did you guys ever given it a thought? Can law be a source of ethics and morality? So some like some number of students might be sitting at their own respective places in front of their laptops and shouting a big yes, yes, why not? Law can be a source of ethics and morality. Because of law we all are at least making ourselves be little bit ethical, right? If there will be no law, we will all succumb to the heinous actions in the society, like theft, right? Like violence, like loot, robbery, and whatnot, right? So some people might be shouting a big yes, yes, law can be a source of ethics and morality, right? Just to give you a one very important case study, it is of basically a Katrina Island of United States. So basically this particular island is very much prone to cyclone, right? And since there was very disastrous cyclones in some year which I am not able to recollect right now, and it was like disconnected by the United States, right? And since it was disconnected, the law and order of this particular island was chaotic, right? There was a situation of theft, violence, loot, robbery, rapes, and etc., right? So this is one of the very important case studies. Try googling it out and reading about it. It is very important case study, Katrina Island, right? Katrina Island case study, right? So a important school will be say big yes, that yes, law can be a source of ethics, right? And especially the social contractualist, social contractualist, social social contractualist like Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, and even the individualist like Mills, Bentham, and etc. They will say yes, law can be even law is a source of ethics and morality. Law is very important source of ethics and morality. If there will be no law, people will go back or succumb back to the state of nature, state of nature, state of nature, which will be chaotic in situation, which will be very much chaotic in situation, which will always be like war-like situation. War-like situation will be a result of it if law is not there in the any society. If iron hand is not there, it will lead to the situation of chaos. So one school will always propound the idea that is yes, law is a source of ethics and morality. But again, there is very other or and very familiar individual, that is Gandhi, who will say a big no, no, stop there, law cannot be source of ethics and morality. How can law be a source of ethics and morality? When we talk about the term ethics, ethics is something internal sanction, right? Internal sanction which is being derived by our conscience, our reason, right? How an external punishment or an iron hand can make someone ethical, right? Because I am acting in certain way just because of the fear of punishment, right? Fear of punishment, I am acting in certain way. Then how law is making me ethical? In what sense law is making me ethical? This is what Gandhi is saying, and he is very just in his way he is speaking, right? And even we know that Gandhi was not a great supporter of modern state. Why? Because it was bound by iron hand, right? And here when we talk about the modern state, he has particularly mentioned in his book, he is basically talking about the colonial state, which was basically using the policy of iron hand to satisfy their own imperial policy, right? To satisfy their own imperial policies, imperial policies of looting their colonial states, right? So Gandhi was not a great supporter of modern state which was bound by iron hand. He has particular mentioned and elicited his idea in his work, that is Hind Swaraj, If you guys are interested, just read a summary of it. It will give you a great idea about certain concept of ethics as well. So people are made to obey the law by the fear of punishment, right? So people are not becoming ethical, but they are just being made to obey the law by the fear of punishment, right? And Gandhi says in his book very beautifully, he says in his book that ethics being internal sanction which is a product of conscience or reason, how just a fear of punishment or action which is a resultant of fear of punishment can lead someone to be ethical. It is basically corrupting the minds and doing nothing else, right? If people will start acting according to their internal conscience, according to or as per the internal conscience, the state or the society of Ram Rajya, the society of Ram Rajya can be attained. Why? Just by acting according to the internal conscience can lead to the society or state of Ram Rajya, because he says that conscience is the product of God. It is very pristine in nature, it is very pure, it is unadulterated, it is the product of God. God has instilled the sense of conscience in us, and if we oblige ourselves to this internal conscience, and if we act as per our internal conscience, then we will be attaining Ram Rajya, right? So this was the idea behind Gandhi's idea that no, law cannot be a source of ethics and morality. How can just by a fear of punishment or action which is a resultant of a fear of punishment can someone be a ethical or moral, right? If we remove the notion of sword or the fear of punishment, the people will again fall back to the state of nature. That is why Gandhi is also a great propounder of moral anarchism. He is a great propounder of moral anarchism, right? Where he is against modern state. So this is the idea, and the two school behind the most profound question which says that can law be a source of ethics or morality. There is one school who will say yes, if because covenant without sword is nothing but a word, and there is a other school that is moral anarchism, with whose main flag bearer and forerunner is Gandhi himself. He says that no, because why? People are made to obey the law just by the fear of punishment. If we will remove this fear of punishment in the society, people will again fall back to the state of nature, and hence they will be the situation will be chaotic, right? So these are the two sides of schools. Okay, now let's see the different concept. Why law cannot be a source of ethics? We have seen the two arguments here, right? Two arguments from their respective points. But when we talk logically, right, when we say logically, taking into consideration why law cannot be source of ethics, becomes certain conditions and situations that arise in front of us. And what are those situations that why laws cannot be source of ethics? Because laws can be outdated, right? Why laws cannot be source of ethics? What is ethics here? Ethics is something universal, right? Ethics is a bigger picture. It is not just a just action. It is just action, but it is more than the just action. In order to have a harmony, in order to have a existence in the society, a civilized existence in the society, we tend to have laws, we tend to have ethics, sorry, and laws are often subjected to change, right? As in the case of if I put this concept in the terms of Plato, then we can say that if laws are some object, then ethics are their ideas, right? Ideas, or it is a utmost knowledge through which this object is derived, right? And hence, taking this idea into consideration, just forget this, take these things into very simplistic manner and understand it, why law cannot be a source of ethics in very pragmatic view, right? Why law cannot be a source of ethics? Because laws can be outdated, right? It can be outdated. How it can be outdated, right? Like how can you think about an example which brings us into the idea that law can be outdated and hence it cannot be a source of ethics, and can you mention that in the comment section? Okay, so the thing which comes to my mind when I say that laws can be outdated, there is very big yes, the most important example is the several colonial laws which are existing even to these days, right? Several colonial laws. When the current Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Bhai Modi, who came to power in 2014, in one of his election campaign, he says that whenever I come to power, one thing I will do is that I will clear out this maze of useless law, right, which are colonial in nature. Right, and hence the law commission also recommended several reforms when it comes to laws outdated laws. So when we are accepting this idea that law can be outdated, how it can be a source of ethics? Because since it is outdated, it will also be redundant or it will be changed, right? Then how it can be a source of something which is very universal in nature, that is ethics, right? So this is very first logical ground through which we can say that yes, law cannot be source of ethics. What is the second thing? Laws can be irrelevant, right? Laws can be irrelevant, right? So just to give you a very funny example here, there is a one law which says that the vehicular motor inspector must have a healthy teeth in order to become vehicle motor inspector. Is there any relation? Can you guys find it out in these two aspect of the story, that a vehicle motor inspector must have a healthy tooth or healthy teeth? There can be, but I don't know. But when it comes to law, it is irrelevant, right? And hence it cannot be a source of ethics. Not just about this, there are several laws which are irrelevant, which are outdated, and which are still in existence. Laws are prone to misuse. The most highlighted example is sedition law. We know how it is being misused by several government in several different times. I am not just saying any particular government, but it is a kind of go-to part in the legal covenant whenever anyone wants to stand against the government, right? So this is a kind of stream of misuse which is being done over a period of time, from colonial to the colonial even to these days sometimes, right? These days. So one very basic questions might be arise in the mind, that sir, whether can we use certain controversial examples in our answers? So I am not saying this is basically said by the Honorable Supreme Court, right? Even the Honorable Supreme Court said that the seditions law are being misused or overused, whose basic objective itself is being violated, right? It was basically formulated in order to subside a sense of antagonism that was arising against a nation, right? But it is kind of now correlated even to the government and etc., right? And hence it is prone to misuse, right? So this is the something which is not I am saying, this is something which the Honorable Supreme Court has propounded in his judgment, right? The fourth one is laws can be non-inclusive as well. The recent and the most important example of this is UCC, right? How we are propounding about merging all the personal codes into a single UCC, right? Which will include all different diverse religion or sect of our country, which will also include the tribal sects of different parts of the country. And in one of the study, it is found that whatever general code of conduct which is being followed by each religion. In tribal sects it is completely opposite. It is completely opposite. If the inheritance right here is being transferred from father to mother, father to the children or the son, in tribal sect it is kind of opposite, right? Or whenever a wedding or marriage happens, then the husband have to go to the house of wife here, right? In tribal sect, certain in northeastern state it is being followed even to this days, right? They have completely their own peculiar codes, right? Then how it can be a it can be possible to merge them into a single UCC with the same set of rules, right? It is kind of applying the same rules, or it is kind of prescribing the same medicine to the patient with different problems, right? And hence it will be non-inclusive because they are not taking into consideration the peculiar rules and regulations that is being followed by the tribal sect, right? So this sometimes law can be non-inclusive as well, right? So this is why on very pragmatic, very practical basis, also in very logical basis, we can say that no, law cannot be source of ethics, right? Law cannot be source of ethics. But in conclusion, we cannot completely refute the idea that laws cannot be source of ethics. We cannot refute the ideas because the other school is also right that says that yes, law can be source of ethics, right? Because if there is no law, people will fall back to their state of nature, and hence this state will be chaotic, and hence we have to take a buddha's madhyam marg. We have to take a buddha's madhyam marg, right? What that is, that yes, we have to conclude that yes, laws can be source of morality slash ethics, but there are exceptions. There are exceptions or exception situation, and this is how you will attain what? Peace in your answer, right? And even evaluator will be happier after looking at your answer if you will always follow a madhyam marg, right? So this is the idea behind, or the answer to the question why law, or can law be a source of ethics and morality, right? So now let's see some of the very highlighted case examples, right? Basically pertaining to a dilemma which says that act which are legally right but not ethically, right? So there is always a conflict between law and ethics, right? So there will be a situation when something will, or act will be legally right, the act will be legally right, but ethically it will be wrong, right? So now let's see some of the examples, right? The act which was legally right but not ethically. So why am I doing this case examples? So the agenda behind doing this case example is the question, right? So this is the question which was asked in the year 2013 or something, right? So here it has been explicitly asked, right, that there is a given statement which says that a mere compliance with law is not enough. The public servant also has to have a well developed sensibility to ethical issues for effective discharge of duties. The question was, do you agree? If you agree, explain with the help of two examples where an act is ethically right but not legally, an act is legally right but not ethically. These are the two situations, right? So now let's see these situations, right? We will also see these questions in greater depth and clarity, but now let's see case examples which you can mention in the answer if any such questions are asked in future dates, right? So let's see a case example of an act which was legally right but not morally. And the first and most important case law is Savita Halappanavar case of Ireland, right? What was the case? So this was the lady in the picture who was Dr. Savita Halappanavar, right? So who was Dr. Savita Halappanavar? She was basically a dentist who was practicing in Ireland. What happened? She got pregnant. Why? She got pregnant, right? She got pregnant, but in her 7 to 8 weeks, I guess, she was given the prescription that she will be undergoing miscarriage, right? What does this mean? So doctor said that whenever the times of delivery come, the child will be still born. The child will be stillborn. Why child will be stillborn? Because the heartbeat of child was very numbing. The heartbeat of child was not up to the rate which was expected, right? And hence doctor declared that the child will be stillborn, right? So one day what happened, she was having a back pain, a severe back pain. She goes to the doctor, and it was said that the abortion was needed. The abortion was needed, right? Because of the because of the of because of the infection in the womb, because of the infection in the womb which she was fostering, abortion was needed, right? But in Ireland, which was mainly governed through the rules catholic rules, abortion was not permitted till the time the child is having even very sensitive beat, the heartbeat, right? So the abortion to Savita Halappanavar was denied, right? Because the child was having even very numbing heartbeat, the abortion was not given to Savita Halappanavar, and the abortion was denied. Now when abortion was denied, so she developed an infection which is called as septicemia, right? So basically, after having a child, right, in her womb, which went unaborted for several weeks, she contracted this particular infection, that was septicemia, and she died, right? She died. And there was a very severe rebukes and protest which was erupted as a ramification to Savita Halappanavar case, right? People started challenging to all the age-old laws in Ireland, right? So it was legally right. In law, it was there that if there is even a minor life in the child, abortion was not legal, but it was not ethical. Why it was not ethical? Because doctor knew that whenever there will be delivery, child will be stillborn, right? Child will not born with their life, they will be basically death upon delivery, right? So child will be stillborn. And now here the situation arised, which was giving the dilemma between the life of the mother versus life of the child, right? So child was already given the decision that he will be or she will be stillborn upon the delivery. So it was very ethical to save the life of the mother, right? But she was denied the abortion because it was not legally viable in Ireland, right? So this is the one very important case law when it comes to act which was legally right? Doctor, they were legally right. In their law, it was mentioned that even if the child have a very sensitive life in them, they cannot be aborted, right? So doctor just followed what was legal, but it was not ethical, because it was a dilemma between the life of mother versus the life of child, and it was already decided that the child will be stillborn upon delivery. Life of the mother would have been saved, right? But it was not, and Savita Halappanavar died, right? So here in this the Irish time, you can say that the woman denied a termination dies in hospital, right? So this was very important issue, right? So here you can see the posters, remember Savita, no church control of maternity hospital, right? Because the laws were mainly driven by the Catholic rules, right? So this is very important examples which can be quoted in the what answer, right? The second example is slave trade, right? Again, it is outdated, but it was very important, right? So though it was legally right during the times in America, US, during the earlier times, right? The pre-independent era of United States, it was basically legally right, but something not ethically. Again, the Kant's idea of deontological ethics comes, that men's must be treated as an end in themselves because of their dignity, right? Because of their dignity and respect that they have, right? And hence slave trade, though it was legal, it was not ethical. What is the third example, and which is very important from a bureaucratic perspective? It is basically clearing slum settlements, right? So once you all become a bureaucrat, right, what will be the one of the challenges you all will face? It is basically a redevelopment programs, right? Redevelopments programs, right? We these days we can see several temples and etc are being made into corridors and etc, right? So one of the very important example is slum settlements, clearing slum settlements. We are having a very famous news of Dharavi project, right? Dharavi projects in Mumbai, where a very enlarged slum settlements of Dharavi will be redeveloped, right? So here, when any such situation arises of clearance of slum settlement, it is legally right but not ethically. Why? Because the slum dwellers who are residing in this particular slums, they are basically forced out of those areas, right? So basically the houses or apartments are being promised by the governments, but they are not assigned effectively to the people. They are not assigned effectively to the slum dwellers who were already residing in this slum areas, right? Their entire livelihoods are dependent upon this particular slum areas, and the population is not small. They are in huge numbers, right? And the children's and the adults who are dependent on their family, right, they suffer a lot because they are the sole earners, they are the sole bread earner in their family, right? Their education get hampers, right? And hence the ramification or consequences like crimes and etc is the outcome, right? Which brings a huge and heinous vices into the society, right? So again, this is the very justful example which can be mentioned of clearing slum settlement, which can be legally right but not ethically, right? So this is the three examples we have just discussed. Now let's see some of the examples where any act which is legally which is basically ethically right but not legally. There can be certain act which can be ethically right but not legally. Just to give you a example here, let's assume that you are taking a road route from your office to your home, right? Every day we go from the, let's say, coaching to our homes or places, right? You are driving in a bike, right? You are driving in a bike, you have a single helmet, right? You see a single man who is lying on the side of road. I think he is overridden, like let's assume that he is overridden by a car, right? He is injured severely, right? He is injured severely and he is very critical. Now you have just a one helmet, right? And you have to take him to the hospital, right? So here it will be ethical, right? Though it is not legal because you are carrying him without helmet, right? It is not legal, it is something not legal, but it will be ethical. Why it will be ethical? Because the purpose is good. The purpose is just to save the life of individuals, right? So in cases like this, even it is not right legally, it will be always right ethically, right? And this is the idea behind the example of an act which is ethically right but not legally. Even during the time of disaster, right, during the time of crisis or disaster, let's see, you have to take a boat of a person, right, which is lying and idle, and you take this boat to save the life of the people who are drowning, right, who are drowning in the cyclone without the permission of the owner, right? You are just taking a boat without the permission of the owner to save the life of the people who are drowning, right, or who are drowning in the cyclone or the inundated water, right? So this will be something not legal, but it will be always ethical. Why? Because the purpose was always just, right? The purpose was noble, it was ideal, right? So, and in certain cases, now let's see very controversial case, it is also an abortion, right? Abortion may be regarded legally wrong, it is not legal in several countries, but for a rape victim, right, let's say there is a rape victim, how important for him or her becomes, like the abortion becomes for her, right? It may be allowed on ethical grounds. So this is the example. Though abortion is not legally, especially for rape victims, it can be allowed on ethical grounds. So these are the few examples which can be mentioned when any examples of act is asked which is ethically right but not legally. Now the time arrives and let's discuss whatever we have seen in the lecture course. Okay, so the question is, a mere compliance with law is not enough, right? So this is the statement which is being given, that the mere compliance with the law is not enough. The public servant also has to have a well developed sensibility to ethical issues for effective discharge of duties. Do you agree? Right? And explain with the help of two examples where an act is ethically right but not legally, and an act is legally right but not ethically. So this part of the questions we have already discussed. We will do with this particular part of question and how you can do this effectively, right? So how can you attempt this first part of the question, which says that basically justifying this particular statement which says that a mere compliance with law is not enough. The public servant also has to have a well developed sensibility to ethical issues for effective discharge of duties, right? So this is, to a greater extent, it is very right, it is very right. Why? Because a bureaucratic job is not static, right? As we all know that the job of an bureaucrat is not static. It is very much dynamic in nature, right? The job of a bureaucracy is dynamic in nature, which requires what? Which requires interpretation of laws in several situations, right? And in this particular interpretation of law, in particular interpretation of laws, we also have to take situational aspects into the consideration, right? Which includes the situational or ethical, what? Sensitivity, which includes ethical sensitivity as well, because our end should always be noble, virtuous, right? And hence this ethical sensitivity includes identification of salient aspects of situation, right? This ethical sensitivity requires the identification of salient aspects of these situations, right? We will see what are the salient aspects of situation is. So this is how you can start this particular answer with. It will give you a beautiful introduction, right? So now let's see, we have to also introduce to the evaluator the concept of ethical sensitivity, right? So what is ethical sensitivity? So what is ethical sensitivity? Ethical sensitivity is basically identification of salient aspects of the society, right? Whatever which is being seen something not legal to me can be correct in their particular situations, right? I am not being posted in my same place, I will be posted in completely different region, right? And hence I have to be accustomed to the particular salient aspect of the society, right? And hence I have to take into the consideration the ethical sensitivity. And now you can give the example of various ethical sensitivity. You guys can also take notes by note side by sides, okay? So ethical sensitivity will includes the concept like equality, right? Equality, equity, compassion, empathy, sympathy, etc., right? So this will give you a great edge. You have already dealt with the concept that a mere dealt with the part of the question which says that a mere compliance with law is not enough, because the role of the bureaucrat is very dynamic, which is not just a mere obligation to the law. It also requires the interpretation of the law as per the situation, right? And the second part of the question was then well, like a public servant also have to take into the consideration the ethical sensitivity or sensitivity to ethical issues for effective discharge of duties. Now, do you agree? So when we see this story, we particularly have to agree because our role is dynamic, right? So this is how you have to take this particular questions into the consideration, and you have to justify your answer by giving the examples from an act which is ethically right but not legally. Again, you can give some general examples, like let's say you are a DM, you are driving, you see a person who has fallen or overridden by a car or something, and you are riding by a bike, you have to take him to the hospital. This is something which is not legally right, but ethically it is very just, right? So this is the example. And what is the second and very pertinent example? Recently the case of Tina Davy has surfaced, right, where she has allocated Tina Davy ma'am has come, right, where she has allocated a certain pool of land to the refugees in Rajasthan, right? Refugees in Rajasthan. She was not legally right when she has undertaken this particular task, but for ethically or from ethical point of view, it was very much justful, right? And she was even praised for her act. Initially, though people have rebuked her act, but later on she was very much praised as well for her act. Why? Because she helped the refugees who were like living there for years of time and have not gotten their justice, right? So she has accrued them their due, their just, right, by assigning a pool of land through which they can earn their livelihood and live there peacefully, right? So this is the example. Being a bureaucrat, we have to mention or attempt in the answer which will do justice to our answer for the post which we are striving and aspiring for, right? The second is an act which is legally right but not ethically. The best example is again the redevelopment projects, right? The redevelopment projects, right? Redevelopment project. It can be legally right, but not ethically. Why not ethically? Because it leads to loss of human rights of people, right? People even lose their homes, livelihood, etc. This is the first aspect. It is even loss to the ecological diversity and well-being. Why? Because when we take into redevelopment, when we take the project of redevelopment, we do acts like deforestation, right? So the flora and fauna of that particular regions gets destroyed, and hence it can be something legally right but not ethically, right? So these are the few examples which you can mention in your copies in order to do justice to the answer, right? So I am hoping that I have done justice to this particular concept, and you guys can also attempt this answer and send me the answers by joining in this Telegram community of UPSC Geek by NRG. You can just join this Telegram community. I will make sure to mention the link in the description, right? You join this Telegram community and you can share your answer script. I will evaluate them and come back with a valuable feedback, right? So with this, we are done with today's lecture. I am hoping that you guys are enjoying it and learning simultaneously, because remember the motto statement, as you strive so you thrive. That is, आप जितनी मेहनत करेंगे उतनी फल मिलेगी.